Now, to try to make sense of this hike in electricity tariffs for a segment of consumers, power sector reform, and how to effectively tackle the challenges in the sector, we're now being joined by Rumundaka Wonodi, a former managing director of Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC and founder of ZKJ Energy Partners. Many thanks for joining us and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, let's just start from the basics. Why should there be any categorization of electricity service in Nigeria where we have band A, band B, and whatnot? Why shouldn't there be a level playing field for all Nigerians?
Well, the very first thing is that where you have limited supply, then you have to have a way to use the word as you have to segregate the customer base. It happens in most industries. If we had enough power to go around to everyone, probably you would not need to do that. Again, you also have to look at the economics of the customers. The willingness to pay for electricity is not the same across board. Some people would consume a little less than others, and therefore what the regulator is done with the distribution companies, and this is also based on stakeholder feedback, is that to categorize customers according to their level of need and also their level of service, and then charge them accordingly. So let me take, for example, a big city like Abuja. You have people who live in Maitama, who live in Wuse, and then you have people who live on the fringes of this city that have to commute into the city every day. The requirements for electricity, it's basically very different. You know, they need this power in the morning, and then they do their stuff there, and they begin to commute. What do they actually need power during the day? One, it's important to them is that when they get back in the evening, they have that power. So 8 hours a day might actually solve their problem, but there are people who are in the city, and you will notice this, when they do not have electricity, they'll run their generators. So those people have shown their willingness to pay and would like to have power for more than 8 hours, for 16 hours, for 20 hours, and therefore you make that provisions for them. So it makes sense to categorize and classify customers.
Right. Now, I'd love for you to shed a little bit of light on this ecosystem around power supply, because there are concerns with such a proclamation, with this order and the tariff hike, is that the discos don't seem to be regulated. Where is the chain of accountability? Because we're already having instances where some of the discos are sending out apology notices. I believe in Abuja, an apology notice has been sent, Ikeja as well, because some people are being charged who are not on Band A, have just vended for Band A at Band A rates. You know, all of these disparities that crop up, yet it seems like these discos are never held accountable. Where are the lapses in this ecosystem? And shouldn't we have addressed those lapses before embarking on this very big reform?
Well, I think it's a chicken and egg issue. The regulator, for one, is bound by the policy directives of the federal government. So, to the extent that the federal government is unwilling to continue to, or do not see a reason to continue to subsidize the sector as it is, then the regulator needs to close that gap. But yes, you make a very good point, and I think that people have raised this even in platforms where I am, that people in areas where they receive 8 hours, 10 hours vended, and they found themselves to have been charged the rate for Band A customers. And I know that the regulator has put out a notice that they are working with Abuja Disco to correct all that. But, you know, in all honesty, this is my personal view, and I've shared this, that the discussions on tariff tend to take too much space in this platform where we discuss the electricity. And why do I say that? It takes too much of space is that, you know, the tariffs that is set for distribution companies is predicated on a revenue requirement for the distribution company and, as a matter of fact, for upstream, for the whole industry, right? And if you're looking at revenue requirement, revenue is a product of two parts, price and quantity, right? So what we've been seeing in Nigeria is that the price keeps going up and the quantity is never moving, right? So I'm hoping that if the government is taking out this subsidy, that there will be investment to actually get the quantity much more than it is today. For instance, if you look at this tariff, one of the things that you'd observe is that the cost of generation, that's for the cost in itself, it's about half the price, even if it's up to that. And then the rest is spread into disco cost, transmission cost, service providers like the regulator, like the Nigerian Bulk Electricity. And, you know, you're spreading all these costs on just very few electrons. If you're able to move from 4,000 to 6,000 to 8,000, then the fixed cost will come down and then the tariff will be more affordable, and also people will have a higher willingness to pay.
Okay, we certainly hear. Would you like to comment on the fact that, you know, a few weeks ago we did confirm right here on Arise TV, that was by the executive director of the Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors, saying that the government owes about 100 billion naira in outstanding electricity debt. Is this something that you would have liked to see prioritized before this this conference took place yesterday?
Well, again, let's assume that the regulator is independent and it does what it needs to do for the market. So it needed to announce this as the time that this quarter started, okay? But I think it's very shameful that government should continue to owe the industry and then forcing ordinary people, well-meaning consumers, to pay for government's inefficiency, because when government does not pay, it all adds to the ATC&C, which is the aggregate technical and collection losses and commercial losses that is in the system. So yes, it's something that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed as soon as yesterday.
Right. Now, earlier you did allude to the fact that there's much needed investment that needs to go into power generation. And of course, one of these conversations is around gas, both the availability and the price. Of course, we saw the increase of the gas price just a couple of days ago. And so much rhetoric over the years about investment in gas. I mean, Nigeria has the highest gas reserves in Africa, yet there isn't enough gas to supply for power generation, which is an unfortunate irony. Why do you think there isn't a genuine willingness to make the investment that's needed so that power can become a commodity available to all? It's sad to hear the scenario that you painted where you say, well, 8 hours is enough electricity for some people. It shouldn't be so. Why is the investment never made?
Well, so that's another issue that is plaguing the industry, right? So we have very few active long-term contracts, right? So if you're going to make investment in gas facilities and you're the private sector, you want to be sure that once you make that investment, that over the horizon of, say, 20 years, that you have an off-taker for your gas supply. Without that, it is very difficult to actually go out and invest in such a product, right? Because it has a limited pathway to get to the customer. It goes through a pipeline, and the other is a virtual pipeline. So either you have it as CNG or LNG. Those two options are very expensive, right? So with the absence of contracts, and then the fact that the power sector is not done very well paying its bill as at when due, the investments have not been made. So that is one other part of the market I think that we need to address. We need to make sure that we have long-term contracts for not just gas, but also for generation that would allow investments to be made. But my thinking is that, when it comes to funding of this value chain, I believe that at this point, the public sector financing might just be a better option than private sector, because the macroeconomics is quite difficult for private sector to bear some of the associated risk. So to de-risk it, I believe that we need public capital in the short to medium term, and then private capital will follow suit.
Well, yesterday when we were listening to that briefing, I referred to it as a conference by mistake earlier on. We did hear Musli Oseni stating that those that are affected by this increased tariff would receive priority service, which includes the setting up of a rapid response team, and also assure Nigerians that those that don't fall under the Band A service will not be relegated to the background. We've already seen neglect from the discos. I'm sure that's definitely not news with the way things are at the moment. Now with this glaring categorization, how do we actually ensure that those who don't fall under the increased tariff section are not just, discarded or completely ignored?
Well, this is 15% of the customer base consuming maybe about 40% of the supply. With 60%, I think you can still get around to other people. But again, we really need to do something to increase supply to homes and businesses in Nigeria. We're talking about 4,000 megawatts, and then you are allocating about 2,000 or just under 2,000 to Band A, and then you're sharing that, and then we have industries, we have commercial entities. I mean, these numbers are not numbers that we should be talking about. So yes, there was something to get round, but I believe that it's suboptimal in either way. The quantity is just too low.
Right. As we round up, how would you rate NEC's performance, especially with regards to monitoring service delivery from the discos? Are you satisfied?
Well, the point is the regulations out there? Yeah, okay, but I don't think that for the manpower that NEC has, how much can be afforded by the industry. They are doing a pretty good job, but the maybe, and I'll say this because of policy. Maybe we should actually see what happens when the states take over the regulation of the distribution companies. The footprint is too wide for NEC with their limited manpower. If they had more, they could do much more. But you can see all the intentions, and then hopefully, I listened to the commissioner in charge of research and planning this morning, and he was quite articulate, talking about all the things that NEC is rolling out in terms of smart metering, in terms of monitoring that would allow this to happen. But there is something that I need to point out to NEC. When they said that if for 7 consecutive days a feeder does not get 20 hours of supply, they will downgrade it to either Band B or Band C, depending on what information they have. Now, I think that it would be better to have that over a month, over 3 months, because then what you have is someone could come give you power on Monday and then do nothing about that, and then make sure that you do not have full 7 days and come back on Saturday and give you another 20 hours and then jump. So if you look at that law, he has not actually defaulted, or he has not infringe on that law to the point where you need to downgrade it. So we need to close a little bit of those loopholes to make it better. Commission has stated, they articulate, they've rolled out new programs, but we have to see how that and all this smart metering, whether it would actually lead to what we've been promised.
And when we remember there was also an admission that some of the feeders that were categorized as Band A turned out not to actually meet Band A standards. But for the customers that have been paying for the Band A service and receiving maybe even Band Z in terms of electricity supply, how should they be compensated?
Well, what NERC had talked about is that there will be free credits to those customers who may be vended under Band B or Band C or Band A, but do not receive the service. They'll get free credits. I don't think that they will get monetary rebates, but they will get some free credits to make up for that. I know that in the past, I'm certain that we've not received 20 hours, but I've never received any rebate. So, but the thing is that the service-based tariff came in 2020 or thereabout, and then we are now in 2024, and the Commission rolled out all the things they've put in place, smart metering, DPIs that will notify the Commission so they can actually rely and be able to say when feeders are fed with electricity. So I think that what is very important is for consumers to join in monitoring and providing the feedback, and then watch and see what NERC does with that information.
Absolutely. It seems the name of the game is watch and see. Mr. Rumundaka Wonodi, former Managing Director of Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC and founder of ZKJ Energy Partners. Thank you so much for your time.